Today's episode is brought to you by Dashlane. They're one of the most successful duos in music history, nearly single-handedly changed the face of electronic dance music and gave rise to stunning live shows, all while earning critical praise and awards. Yet the quiet Frenchmen behind the robot helmets choose to stay out of the public eye. On today's program, we're going to dive into the history of the band to try to answer the question, why does Daft Punk wear helmets? Daft Punk is the collaboration between two men, Thomas Bangalter and Guy Manuel de Homme Christo. They met in 1987 while attending high school in Paris. The two quickly formed a bond over similar music and movie tastes, including the cult 1974 film Phantom of the Paradise by Brian De Palma. The rock opera loosely follows the plot of the Phantom of the Opera, and the main character is disfigured wearing a helmet through most of the movie. Thomas and Guy saw it nearly 20 times as young teenagers, and they loved everything about it. The production design, the music, and the art. Needless to say, the film made a huge impression on them, and many think this is where they got the idea of the robot helmets. Then in 1992, Thomas and Guy started a rock band named Darling with future Phoenix guitarist Laurent Brankowitz. Their name was taken from the Beach Boys song, which they eventually recorded as a cover, along with an original track. Both were released on a 7-inch as part of a Duophonic Records compilation in April of 1993. With this release, the band felt like things were moving in the right direction. That is until a review in the May issue of Melody Maker magazine, which called their music Daft Punky trash. While the review itself didn't hurt their feelings, it did make them reconsider the direction they were going. Around the same time, Thomas and Guy went to their first rave show on a Paris rooftop. The experience was life-altering. The two men were used to going to rock shows where fans went to hear their favorite songs, but at this rave, because of the way DJs create live mixes, Thomas and Guy witnessed people enjoying music they had never heard before. The two men became entranced with the underground scene. It felt like a new musical revolution, and they wanted to be a part of it. It goes without saying that Darling disbanded soon after. They started working from Thomas's home studio, putting together their first demo of electronic music, but the men still needed a name. So as an embrace of that fateful bad review, they became Daft Punk. Then in September of 1993, they played their demo for Soma Records, and they were blown away. By April of '94, Soma Records released their debut EP titled The New Wave, and their record became an instant underground hit. They built on that momentum with the release of two more singles, Da Funk in May of 1995 and a second single in February of the following year. At this point, offers from major record labels were pouring in, but they decided to sign with Virgin Records in May of '96 because the deal allowed them to own their recordings. And since Thomas's father was a music producer and singer in the 70s, they were well aware of how record labels take advantage of artists. They understood that the label was working for them, not the other way around. 7 months after signing with Virgin, their debut album Homework was released on January 20th, 1997. The Spike Jonze directed video for Da Funk helped to propel the album into a hit record, and even I, a nerdy 15-year-old, knew who Daft Punk were because of MTV. In support of the new record, the band went on a small tour, performing the music using equipment from their home studio. However, since Daft Punk were still a few years away from donning their robotic personas, they performed these shows as themselves. As their fame grew, so did requests for interviews and publicity photos. They could feel the star-making machine taking over, and they didn't like it. Both men were naturally shy, but more importantly, they never sought out fame. It wasn't the reason they got into music. They felt, and still do, that the music should be in the spotlight, not the artists creating the music. They fought against becoming stars by hiding their faces. At first, it was more improvised than planned, often buying cheap masks right before an interview, meeting, or photo shoot. But it was becoming clear that they needed to find a more permanent solution, and so on September 9th of 1999, at 9:09 in the morning, the robots were born. There was an accident in their studio when one of their samplers exploded in front of them. When the two men awoke, they discovered the explosion turned them into robots. Of course, that's the story they told the press, but what really happened was an artistic collaboration between French directors Alex and Martin, along with Paul Han of Daft Arts. They designed and produced the helmets and originally intended them to be worn with wigs, but Daft Punk tore these off right before a 2001 photo shoot for their upcoming second album, Discovery. Now, these first masks were capable of displaying messages and lights thanks to LED technology engineered by Tony Gardner. However, in order to power the lights, both men had to wear bulky backpacks. They also had custom-made gauntlets that controlled the messages and the colors of the LED displays. All in all, the helmets reportedly cost $65,000 to design and produce, but the resulting image turned the band into music icons. And while the music for Discovery was a departure from their more house style, it did cause some hardcore fans to turn away from the band. However, this more disco-infused album helped to broaden their appeal to a larger fan base. And while they decided against touring for Discovery, they did release several music videos. Each of these featured animations from their upcoming animated feature film Interstellar 5555, which was eventually released in 2003. In March of 2005, they released their third album, Human After All, which some consider their first career misstep. And here we have a more stripped down version of Homework and Discovery, and unfortunately it feels a bit rushed because they only spent 12 days recording it. Despite the lukewarm critical reception, Daft Punk made the album they wanted to make, and it didn't matter to them if it wasn't a hit record. In support of Human After All, they produced 3 music videos, and 2 of them featured the duo donning redesigned helmets. Gone were the bulky backpacks and elaborate LED displays. In their place, they wore snazzy black jumpsuits with their names stitched on the back. Both helmets now featured black visors, and Thomas's mask lost its smile. They also got refined gloves that allowed for better tactile feel while playing their instruments. They planned to make a 4th music video for the song Human After All, but the project morphed into their next feature film, 2006's Electroma. Oddly enough, the movie doesn't feature any music by Daft Punk, even though their robot personas are the main characters. At the end of the film, Thomas's robot self-destructs while Guimond's combusts before walking off into the desert night. This left some fans to speculate if the days of the Daft Punk robots were over. But these rumors were soon dashed in April of 2006 when they performed as the robots at the Coachella Music Festival. Leading up to the event, Daft Punk were facing an uncertain future. They hadn't toured in almost 10 years, and Human After All failed to chart like their previous albums. There was a feeling in the air that maybe the band was done. Perhaps in response to this, or to prove that they were still innovators, they worked in secret on an elaborate stage production. Not even their manager knew what they were up to. And when their show started at Coachella, the crowd went nuts. Their live set blew away all expectations, as it was like nothing anyone had ever seen. The duo performed in the cockpit of an elaborate pyramid covered in LEDs. They used so many that they reportedly exhausted the LED supply within the US. This single show sparked their following world tour, which in turn led to the release of their second live album, Alive 2007. Their outfits continued to evolve, this time with the addition of electroluminescent lighting to their masks and suit, as seen best in their 2008 Grammy performance with Kanye West. Also in 2008, they began work on the soundtrack to Disney's Tron Legacy. For their cameo in the film, new suits and helmets were made to match the look of the Tron universe. While the film didn't do as well as expected at the box office, the soundtrack was a hit on its own, and the 2 years they spent working on the film proved pivotal. Not only did they get to incorporate their sound with a professional orchestra, but they became far more comfortable working with other musicians and producers. This practice of collaborating influenced the direction of their next album, Random Access Memories. They wanted this next record to be a tribute to the albums they grew up adoring, and so they made it almost as a challenge to themselves to go back to the way records were made in the 70s and 80s. Instead of sampling old recordings like they used to, they would make new samples on analog tape using live instruments. Thus, they created new sounds that sounded old. Basically, they went backwards to go forwards. On top of that, they reached out to artists that inspired their own music, such as Nile Rodgers, Paul Williams, and Giorgio Moroder. They also brought on contemporaries like Julian Casablancas, Pharrell Williams, Panda Bear, and others they worked with in the past. And they even recorded at vintage recording studios such as Capitol, Conway, the former A&M studios, and Electric Lady Studios in New York. When Random Access Memories was released in 2013, it became their first record to top the charts in the US. They culminated on the album's critical success with a standout performance of Get Lucky at the 2014 Grammys, where they won 5 awards, including Album of the Year. What started out as a way to combat shyness turned into their signature look. The robots created mystery and excitement for their audience in a way that Daft Punk felt they could never match as their human selves. By donning the masks, it's allowed them to stay humble, grounded, and free to be creative. Apart from die-hard fans recognizing them, they can walk down the street with complete anonymity. It's also a reflection of who they are as people. They didn't get into music to be famous. They did it because they love it and continue to do so. They could easily take off their masks and promote themselves, but they don't. When so often we hear how egos get in the way of great bands, it's nice to know that the two men remain good friends and partners. Perhaps the masks allowed them to do that, or maybe it was them all along. Just two good-natured guys who just happened to change the world with their music. Where they go next is anybody's guess, but no matter what direction they take, we can be certain that their robot personas will be the one constant through it all. As much as I love to live in an analog world, the truth is we live in a digital age, and with that comes a whole host of security issues, including having strong passwords. Now, to write my videos, I do a lot of my research on the internet, and having one place to keep all my passwords secure is paramount. With my brain filled with useless music trivia, I don't have room to come up with an elaborate password and then memorize it. But that's where Dashlane comes in. It's my all-in-one place to create, store, and update passwords. But it also saves me time by automatically logging me into websites like Discogs or filling in my address when I'm ordering that obscure vinyl pressing. Dashlane also makes it easier to keep secured notes like the combination to my vinyl vault, and Dashlane will even keep track of the video equipment I buy. Plus, it has a built-in VPN for when I'm on public Wi-Fi, as well as a dark web search that alerts me if my information has been compromised. And all of this is available across all platforms: Mac, PC, Android, and iOS. Right now, new users will save 10% on Dashlane Premium when you use the code VinylRewind at checkout. So go to dashlane.com/vinylrewind or follow the link in the description below. All right, everybody, that will do it for today. I want to thank you all so much for watching. I'm your Vinyl Geek, and I'll catch you on the flip side. Hey everyone, thanks again for watching this history of Daft Punk. Now if you want to see more, I have a couple videos that YouTube will choose for me. And if you like what you saw, I put out new videos every Tuesday and sometimes Fridays.